Okay, hi everyone. Good evening. Welcome to our JavaScript developer class. We've been looking at building on how to build and or understanding MVC applications, which which actually means model view controller, right? So last week, I think we started last week. We looked at routing. So I think I still have that file opened. We looked at, we explained what the MVC is, and we looked at, if I go to my code editor, routing, views, a little bit of work on the views. We didn't touch on controllers, so I think we touched on controllers a little bit, but majorly we looked at how to set up a server, installing Node.js, routing especially, so I expect everyone to maybe understand basically what routing means and how routing communicates with the views. And we just did some little bit of practical, right? So I'm just going to look into some other important stuff, and I'm going to try to explain it as understandable as I can, because this part of the whole MVC model, it's I think is one of the most important parts, right? Because you need data, you need to be able to manipulate data. In fact, whatever you build won't be fully working if there's no data or if there's no data manipulation language, right? So previously we've looked at building a server in JavaScript, starting the server, creating routes, sending it to the views. So today I'm going to briefly talk on controllers. I think I started it last week, but I'm going to continue on controllers. I'm going to talk on model. We're going to add the model layer, model and databases. I'm going to talk on CRUD. Maybe if I know some persons might be familiar with this, or if you're not familiar with it, I'm going to talk about CRUD and what it means. And I'll see if time will permit me to actually create a database or help everyone create a database and practice what I'm going to do, because at the end of this week, it's expected of us like to maybe build a little, very, very little basic demo app, right? So we're going to be building a little blog app. I think it's either we're going to use blog or users, where it's just a page, maybe a landing page that just lists out. I think we're going to use blog, list out a blog, like maybe a page with a list of blogs. You can create a blog post, edit a blog post, or delete a blog post, right? Very basic stuff. We're not going to do any styling, just pure HTML, but you can do styling on your own. But we need to understand models and databases, and maybe CRUD, especially CRUD, to understand how that works, right? So I won't be going back to maybe routing and how server works. So whatever I do today, I'll assume everyone understands that. So I'm just going to go into what we have for today. Then maybe if you have questions, you can ask your questions. Okay, so I'm just going to jump right into what we have for today. Okay, so previously, right, up until Friday, we've stopped at routing and the views folder, right? I did something on Friday, but I think not much people were in the class because of the HR section. So I'm going to repeat everything I tried to do in the tutorial class, right? So I started this on Thursday. I'm going to start from controller. So previously, let me see what controller I created. Just give me a minute. News. Okay, I use news, so I'm going to change to, okay, I use blog also. Let me see contact. So I'm going to create a new route, right? Sorry, so I can explain this better. So I'm going to create contact. Let me go to my app.js. So I'm sure everyone has this demo project, right? So I'm going to create contact. I already created controllers for the other one, so I don't want to mess them up. Contact router. Then up here, I'm going to add the contact router. File is contact. Okay. Saving this. Where's the render contacts you have? So this should work. Now, if I click on contacts now, it should work. So prior to now, if I go to my app.js, we have our routes. I'm sure everyone understands this. We're importing the routes from a file. if I go to the file, we have our contact router here, right? So everything I've done is just router.get, and I think someone asked a question about having multiple route handlers here, right? So when we talk about CRUD operations, we're going to understand that there are different kinds of operations we can carry out, maybe on a web page or maybe to our application, right? So we're going to get there, but I don't want to jump into that. I want to talk about controllers first, right? So I want to talk about controllers. I already we started controllers last week, Thursday, but I want to say add a controller layer to our web app. So in actual sense, we are trying to create an MVC app, which means there's a view, there's a controller part of the app, and there's a model, right? So if I go to this little description or definition part I have here, the controller is the request response handler. Okay, so this is just like a snippet I put. The controller is a request response handler. But right now, if you look at my contacts route file, this is from routes contact, you see that the request response handler is embedded in the routes file. Okay, so this is not what we want. We want anything handling the request response to be a controller. Okay, so we generated all this with Express, and that's why it generated all this here, and it wants to allow us to move it to the controller. So basically, what a controller is just a request response handler. In plain English, is a function that handles the request and response and sends the user to the view. If I open up any of this diagram, you see that controller maybe manipulates model, and it's the controller that sends the request to the view, right? So whatever we've been doing here, res.render, this is actually a controller, but the thing is we've had the controller in our route file all this while. Okay, so what I want to do here, I'm going to remove this function. It's just a function, right? So see, I did this on Friday. If I remove this function and declare it here, function maybe gets all contacts is the name, right? So if you've been with us in our JavaScript class, or maybe when we started out, you know that this is just a function declaration, and I can call the function here. If I do get all contacts, it's still going to work the same way, because this router.get just expects a function to be here. So previously we just had the function declared here, like we had in when we did get add event listener, we'll put click and we'll put a function. So it's just the same thing. So I can take off this function and put in a controller. Okay, so that is what we want to do today. The only mystery or the only technicality about a controller, what a controller does for now, is it handles this request. And for it to be able to say, or for we to be able to say handles this request, we need this function in the controller folder, right? So we can kind of keep things clean. Then when we add our model, we'll be able to do, there are so many stuff we can do in this controller, and we are going to see that today. Okay, so without wasting much time, I'm just going to remove this function. The same way we've been importing the routes file in the index file or app file, I'm going to remove this function and put it in the controllers file. Okay, so I'm going to assume I don't have all these files. I'm going to go to my controller. So first of all, I'll start from my app.js again, so you understand the flow. Contact router. I come to where we declared contact router. I just see that we are only requiring a function or a file or all the contents of a file, right? If I go to routes, contact router, we'll see that I'm receiving a request and handling it. But right now, I want another layer, the controllers, to handle this request. So I'm going to go to controllers. You shouldn't have, maybe if you've not followed along with me to do this, you should not have control. I created this last week, okay? So you can create a folder controllers. Then in the folder, I'm going to create a new file called contacts.js.
Sami, can you please enlarge, please?
Okay, sorry, thanks. Is okay, right?
Thank you.
All right, so I'm going to create a new file in my controllers called contacts.js. Again, it's the same thing we've had, in routes. So I wanted to handle a route. I created a file I created the contact file. Then I want to handle a request. I'll create a contact file in the controllers. If I open it now, it's just empty. Okay, so right now we want, whenever this request router is called, we want the controller, the contact controller to handle this request. What I'm going to do, right? I'm going to go to the contact controller. I hope you can see my screen well. And like I said, it's just a function, right? So I'm just going to create a variable or an object, right, called const. What's it called? I'm going to call it contact controller equal an empty object. We're going to export it in a while, but let me just show you what we're doing here. Is the same thing we did when we were maybe saving the contents of this file in a variable, right? So I'm going to say const contact controller. I want to create a series of handlers for different requests. We're going to see that in a while, right? So I want to create a function. If you can remember, this is just an object and I can put in key value pairs in it, right? If you remember JavaScript, you can put in key value pairs in objects. So I can do contact controller dot, let's say, let me look at our routes. So this is the first route, is to get the contact page. So I can call it get all contacts. Okay, equal to, I'll just make it a function. The parameters are request, response, next, like we have in the request handler, and open like block curly braces, right? So again, this is a function. This is our object. We are just trying to add a property in this object. So in case anyone here is confused, what I did here is the same thing as saying, let me just clear this up and do something so it will be a little bit, it's the same thing as saying equals contact controller equals open braces, then put get all contacts equals, sorry, not equals, like this, function request response, like this, right? So this might be a little bit understandable because I just declared an object and put in a key and value, right? But when writing controllers, we do it the other way, so it can be clean and you understand what function handles what request, right? Excuse me. So I've kind of undone what I did. So again, I just declared an object, then I'm adding a key to the object, right? Contact controller dot get all contacts. Then the value is a function. So what do I want this function to do? I'm just going to go here. For now, again, if you can see, I put a comment here. We are not doing anything in our controller, but trust me, in an actual app, a controller can possibly be up to 100 or 200 lines of code because we're going to be doing so many if else logic statement, right? But right now, we are just returning or sending the user to the contacts page, right? So I'm just going to copy this, go back to our controller. For now, we are going to come back, right? We're going to get data from models. We'll come back to this. But for now, what I want to do is I want to send the user to the view, right? So again, the controller is the request handler, right? And what we just did is we just handled the request and sent a response. So again, what this response, this rest means, it means response. So this is request and response, right? So I'm going to save this now, and we're going to see this controller in action, okay? I'll save this. So I'm just going to go from the start again. Routes, we are listening for this endpoint and passing it to this contact router. Contact router was just imported. Then if I go to contact route, you see that I'm just creating a route handler, then I'm exporting it so that my app.js can be able to use it. Same thing, right? I just created the controller. I want this controller to handle the get all contact endpoints. What am I going to do? I'm going to export it. Module.export equals to, where's my equal sign? Equals to contact. Okay, so module.export equals to contact controller. Okay, so before I go to the route file, I'm going to explain this. I created an object. I added a key value pair to the object, which is a get all contents key. The value is a function, and I exported the whole object. The same thing we are doing in this route file, right? We imported our Express server, which I told us this is a default Express server. We created a route handler. We exported it for the index file or the app.js to require it. So right now, as I've exported my controller, I'm going to come to my routes, right? Because the goal is for that controller to be able to control the route, right? I'm going to do var contact controller equal to the same syntax require, then I'll put in an address or like a location, just the same way we put in link addresses or relative of or absolute addresses in our HTML, right? I'm going to say to see this file, you need to go up one step. Then in the controllers folder, look for a contact.js file. Okay, so again, I'm exporting this object. I'm requiring the object here and saving that object, all the contents of the object in a variable called contact controller. So what can you see now, right? So our goal is to remove this function and pass the handler to our controller. So for now, if I want to do that to make my little app here, make the controller work, I'm just going to take that off. I just deleted that. So rather than having that function here, I'm going to have contact controller dot get all contacts. Okay. So before I go to my browser, I'm going to explain one more time what's happening here, right? So I'm going to go to app.js again. Contacts goes to contact router, right? Then if I go to contact routes, the same thing we had before, we are requiring our Express, like our server and the route handler. We don't need to write this, right? It's already, Express has already handled that for us. But this time, the new change we have here is that we are requiring another file, right? A contact controller. So when we see router.get, we pass the handler. Remember, controller is a request response handler, right? We pass the handler to a contact controller. Then this is remember, this is an object. We are calling a function get all contacts. It's the same thing as having, let me see if I copied that stuff. No, I did not copy it. Let me just show you. So it's the same thing as having this function directly embedded here, right? But again, we just removed it and abstracted it to this file because we want this file to handle all the requests and it's still going to communicate with the models, right? So we don't want it to be in the route file, okay? So this is just basically how controllers work and the major work of controllers, right? It's very basic now. It might look a little bit easier, but trust me, this file can get a little bit lengthy when we start using data. Okay, so for now, I'm going to save this and try to test this, right? So my server has restarted. If I go to my browser, take this off, go to the home page, index page, refresh, and go to contact, you're going to see that it still works, right? But let me do something so you know that we got this stuff from a controller. I'm going to pass in a variable, right? I'm sure every one of us have seen how variables work, but I'm going to explain. The variable should be, okay, let me see. So I'm going to pass in a variable just to like kind of show that this stuff is coming from a controller, right? I'm going to say title, like we had when we generated our Express file, Express server. I am coming from a controller, okay? Or requests is being handled from a controller, right? We are still going to talk a little bit on variables, right? But let me just pass in a variable. Then I'll go to my contacts view and display. So we know our contact controller is actually working, right? So rather than when, okay, after welcome to contact, I'm just going to create a P tag to just display it, right? I'm just going to display title. Okay, if I go back to home page and I click on contact, you're going to see request is being handled from a controller. So basically what I've done, right, in this short period of time, our contact handler was being handled directly from the route file. And this is kind of not really complete because we're trying to build an MVC app. So we just needed to separate whatever is handling our request to a controllers folder, right? Let me say, yeah, to a controllers folder. We created the controllers folder, created a function to handle that request, then exported the function. So before I open up for questions, I'm going to do one more stuff so you see one of the importance of controllers and why it's always good to kind of what's it called? Separate request handlers to controllers. I'm going to go to W3 schools, right? To show you some examples about maybe how routing works and endpoint, right? So I'm in the JavaScript lesson, and if you look at the URL, let me see, can I zoom my URL bar? I'm sure you can see this. Okay, it's not going to zoom. I'm sure you can see this, right? It says /js/default.asp. If I go to JS syntax, you see it will change to /js/js syntax, right? So what I'm trying to explain, that there can be many other endpoints under the JS endpoint, right? So if I go to my app file, as you can see, we have contacts. So I can have many other contact routes under my contact, right? Again, for example, if I go to JS variables, you see /js/js variables. So this is how you build applications. You want to group stuff based on maybe their resource or their parent resource. So I'm just going to show you like add another what's it called, sub endpoint under the contact, right? So right now, if you go to contacts, this is the controller that is going to handle contact. So let me add let me say router.get. So anything that's coming in here is already /contact, right? Then I want to put /contact/ contact. Let me say contact admin. This is just an example. Maybe if you're building an actual software, you should know what kind of endpoints to have. Okay, then I'm going to just say, okay, we've not created any handler, right? Any contact controller, but I'm just going to say contact. Remember, I've not created it, right? Controller dot get admin contacts, right? I'm just going to save it like this. Remember, again, I've not created this. I'm going to go to my controllers file. As you can see, I only have get all contacts, right? So the only handler I have is to get all contact page. So I'm going to go add another function to my contact controller. So this is how you just build on whatever controller you have. Contact controller.get admin contacts. Okay, equals to function request response next. So all these are just parameters passed by Express. So you just need to kind of always put them right like that, right? The request handler, the response handler, and next. Okay, I'm just going to open up my function again, like we did. I'm going to just, let me not type this again. Let me just copy it out. Copy, paste this, but this time I'm going to change the variable from, I'm still going to render the same file. I can do that, but I'm going to change the variable from request is being handled from contact controller to this is the admin contacts page. Okay, I'm going to save it. So before I go to my browser, right now, based on an example I pulled out from W3 because you can see that you can have a route, then have sub routes under it, right? So JS variables, JS let. Same thing, we have contacts, but an actual software, right? Our actual app, we might have multiple children routes under contact. So I have contact admin. Then I created the controller function to handle it. Then what I'm doing, I'm returning the contacts page, but with a different variable. If I save this, go back, go to home. My server is down. Let me just check why my server went down. Okay, so nothing just died. I'm just going to go to home, refresh. If I go to contacts, I'm going to see request is being handled. Okay. Yeah, so this is just contact, right? But what we did, I'm going to have to go to contact/contact admin, right? So I just created a sub or a child route under contact. You can create more based on what you want to like build, right? So this is W3 Schools. This is like an educational site or a content site. You see, they have so many content under JS. So they put them as children under the JS endpoint, right? So ours, we have contact/contact admin. If I hit enter, you're going to see my variable is going to change. This is the admin's contact page. So we're just, everything I'm doing is just an example. I don't have time to maybe create a very, very beautiful HTML markup to display all this, but we're just trying to demonstrate how routing and controllers work, right? And you should know that whenever maybe the route changes, the page is like whatever content is here is going to change like maybe majorly based on the app. So as easy as it looks, I've kind of separated our request handlers. You can see our route file is a little bit cleaner, right? So get the base, just send it to this contact controller, get all contacts, get admin, send it to contact controller, get admin. I can have multiple post, get, delete, but I don't want to increase it more than this. I can add another one, maybe router.get, maybe developers or users or something. So it will be contacts users. Then I'm going to create a controller to handle it, right? So again, if you can see from here, a controller is just a function, but it does some important things, then sends the user a response, okay? So before I start playing and manipulating data, I want to just take a pause and see if anyone has a question before I just start playing around with it. I can just raise up your hands. Okay, Olakunle, was it about zooming my screen, or you have a question? Can I see your hands up?
Yeah, it was just to see the screen. Sorry.
Okay,
it was just
cool.
to see the screen.
Yeah, thanks. So I think we can go ahead, right? Okay. Yeah, so I think we can go ahead since it seems everyone understands maybe how controllers work, right? So again, controllers are just functions that handles your request, and this is just how you kind of create controllers and export them. There are different methods, right? So I can do this in, I think, 3, 4, 5 different ways, but this is just the easiest way to use to explain how controllers work, okay? So I am going to try to get to.
So sorry, Sammy.
Hello.
The export module that you just did.
Yeah.
Does it works for all the controllers? The get admin, the contact. It works. I mean, the get all contacts and the get admin contact.
Yeah. Everything
this
is
module export works for it.
Yeah, so everything is already inside the contact controller. So when you export the contact controller, you're exporting everything.
Okay.
Yeah. So I wanted to go to what we have, right? What I have in my document, right? So we've been playing around with routes, controllers, handling requests, and sending to the front end, right? We've talked little or nothing about models and database, right? So I said I was going to like open up Salesforce to use to explain this, because I'm sure most of us here might be conversant with it, right? So basically, let me see. Basically, the model, right? The model and database, right, is the data store or data part of our application. If I go to the content we started with last week, let me see models. yeah, so the model represents the structure of the application, right? It maintains the data of the application. Essentially, is the database part of the application. If I go to, skip for now. If I go to maybe one of my playgrounds, everything we've been doing or everything you've done in, just give me 1 minute. Oh, really? Yeah, all my playgrounds. Okay, this is the wrong account. Okay, let me see. Let me launch this. Just give me 1 minute. Let me use something easily understandable to explain, right? So models and database. So in basic sense, if you can look at this our application, right? Again, if you can see a folder called models in my projects, you shouldn't have it. I created it today. I just created it today. So the views, like we all know, is the visible part of our application. The routes and controllers is the request response handler. Then the models is what we call the data layer, right? So your app needs to, if you're building a dynamic software, right? Like we have our social media sites, they always have a data store or a database. So a database is just where data is stored, and model is how the from the name, model is how the data is structured, right? I just wanted to kind of give an analogy. Let me see if I go to setup and object manager, right? So this is like Salesforce just provides a graphical user interface to use to represent this stuff, right? I think when Babatope was talking about objects in Salesforce, I mean, he always, the first thing he says is these are just tables, or this is a database, right? Okay, I think the word he used that these are tables, right? So this is like a data source, but Salesforce just provides a user interface to interface with this, right? So database are just, the database is a storage system to use to maybe store and retrieve data for your applications. Then a model is maybe a predefined layout or structure you use to kind of instruct your application how data will be stored in your database. So like a typical example of a model is if I want to go to accounts and I want to create a new field, if I click on new, I will have to select maybe the field type, right? So it's called data type. Salesforce it's called data type or field type. So maybe number, relationship, checkbox, current. So this is the data type, right? So this is called modeling. If I go to these contents, I think I shared this content a while ago. So the model is an entity that defines how you want information to be stored or retrieved from your database while using the controller, right? So if I scroll down a bit, this is an example of a model, and it's just basically the same thing all of us are familiar with, right? So let's say we have a user model. We should have a user model in Salesforce. If I go and search for user, yeah, we have a user model, and if you have some similar fields, right? About, address, emails, call center. So this is quite different, but the gist is modeling allows you to structure how data is stored in your database. Again, database is the structure, database is the storage, right? Models is the structure of how you want data to be stored in your database, okay? So if I go back there, you see this user, it has fields, right? First name is text. Last name is text. The same way when you want to create maybe field and relation, if I click on new, I can select text here. I can select number, email, and stuff like that, right? So this is called, what we've been doing all over maybe in our project is called data modeling, okay? You are creating the model in which your data is going to be stored in the database. Salesforce just makes it easy by providing a user interface, but if you're building applications, maybe via Apex, maybe if you're writing code, you have to do all those by yourself, right? You have to write them in code, maybe model the data, give the database the type of data you want, and just kind of create the database yourself, okay? So again, in a nutshell, database is a storage system used like to store data, right? Models is a model is a structure. Modeling, it's like you structuring how you want your data to be stored in the database. Okay, so if you see this is a user table, right? This is a user table. We have a user table in the database. Same thing as saying we have a user object in Salesforce. Okay, the user table has first name, last name, email, password, gender, date of birth, terms, blah, blah, blah. But see where the modeling comes in. The data type of first name is text. So whenever you want to save a user and the first name is a number, the database will shout at you or just give you an error saying, hey, we want this field type to be text. This is supposed to be email, but text, password still text, gender M or F, date of birth numbers, terms and policies Boolean, then special offer still Boolean, right? Yes or no. So you're not sure, right? Modeling is kind of defining the structure of how you want data to be stored. Then a database is the storage itself, like the actual storage in which or where your data is going to be stored. Okay. So there are different types of databases, right? So when dealing with Salesforce, maybe if you've only worked with Salesforce, you've not done any development, Salesforce handles all those for you because, right, it's what they do. They abstract maybe the technical stuff and just kind of gives you a user interface, right? So there are different types of databases, right? There are relational databases and non-relational databases. I am not going to go deep into this because it's not like fully required to know the core differences between them, right? But basically, you're going to be working with the relational databases much or more of the time, right? So the difference is relational databases, excuse me. Yeah, so the difference is relational databases, right? They store data in what we call rows and column format, right? So I'm just going to give an example. Relational databases stores data in what we call rows and column, like in a rows and column way, right? So if I go to Salesforce, go to accounts, let me change this to all accounts, right? So this is an example of whenever you hear maybe a relational database, I'm not going to kind of go deep into this because majorly everything we'll be working with is relational databases, right? Both in Salesforce, though Salesforce kind of supports this, but just kind of be comfortable with relational databases, right? So relational databases is, we call them like the basic definition of them is they store data in rows and columns, okay? So if you see this now, all the fields we created, let me just go to Object Manager, Accounts. I'm using Salesforce to kind of demonstrate databases. I'm going to get code if we are permitted to get there today. So we have all these fields, right? All these fields or labels in the database table, right? So we're going to see them as rows. Like this is how it is going to be stored in the database, right? It's going to be stored, the labels are rows. Then each records, I can have 1,000,000 records, 1,000 records, they have a different column. Sorry, the labels are columns, right? Pardon me, the labels are columns. Then each record, for every new record, a new row is created. Okay, so basically, right, relational databases are just is a type of data store that stores data as rows and columns. Okay, but non-relational databases stores data in object-like, right? So JavaScript, like this, they store data like JavaScript objects. So if I go to my controller and show you this contact, this is how maybe NoSQL saves data. Let me try and create a dummy one so you see. Let me see, I'm going to go here, go down and just do, let's say, const accounts from Salesforce, right? So if it's a NoSQL, this is how it's going to save it in its data store. Account name, we have account name, Sami, the opportunity, I don't know, Sammy, right? So I can continue and on, but what I just want to explain is relational databases saves records in its data store as rows and columns, while non-relational databases or object storage saves data as objects, okay? I won't even try to go deep into this because it's another topic on its own, but what we are going to maybe read on or work with is relational database, right? Because that's maybe, let me not say it's the easiest, is what we are going to be using for all our operations, right? So even when we get to Apex, all our database query, SOSQL, and our SQL are going to be via the SQL syntax, okay? So these are just types of databases, right? So relational databases, for relational database, there are softwares that we can use, right? There are different types of relational database, right? There are MySQL, Postgres, non-relational database has their own, okay? But we're going to be working with Postgres, right? So let me just skip all these too much technical stuff. Again, I'm going to summarize. Models is the structure of how data is stored in your database. Databases are the actual storage. There are different types of databases, relational and non-relational. We're going to be using relational, and the type of relational database we're going to be using is called Postgres. Okay, so I'm going to come back to this. Let me just kind of talk more on this again before we start maybe doing some little practicals. Okay, so Postgres, right? Before I go into maybe kind of writing queries or writing database calls with any type of database, right? I want to talk about SQL, or I said I was going to talk about SQL, right? So I'm going to share this link. I'm going to share it in chat also. So I'm going to share it on WhatsApp too, right? Because I want everyone to maybe just come and play around with just 4 commands here, because whatever we'll be doing for the rest of the week depends on you understanding just some basic 4 commands here. Same thing with Salesforce development, right? You're going to be using select queries a whole lot. Okay, is this JavaScript? Let me see what I shared, sorry. Okay, I shared JavaScript, sorry. Tutorials, learn SQL, and this is what I wanted to share. Okay, so if I go back to this models, databases, types of databases, so the way you kind of write queries, save records, and communicate with databases is via what we call SQL queries, right? If I go to the home again, this is how we learned our HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. I'm just going to read through this document, right? So SQL is a standard language for storing, manipulating, and retrieving data in databases, right? So whenever maybe you do maybe you create, maybe okay, I come here, I click on new record, new fields and relationship, data type, texts, I create the label, blah blah blah. This platform automatically writes an SQL query to create a record in databases, right? So all database, right, uses SQL. It's also a language on its own, the way we kind of have JavaScript as a language, but it's just a querying language for communicating with the database, right? You can't use JavaScript to communicate directly with the database except to install an ORM. So if you want to communicate to the database, you have to use maybe or call SQL queries, right? So we're going to be using SQL, or we're going to be calling or writing a whole lot of queries in Salesforce. So it's just kind of better or good. You just get your feet wet with SQL, and it's a little bit easier than everything we've learned, right? It's just like HTML, or just the syntax is quite easier. But basically, SQL is a standard language for storing, manipulating, and retrieving data in databases, okay? If I just go to their first intro, you're going to see Okay, standard for manipulating databases. So SQL stands for structured query language. We're going to kind of play around with SQL. I already have SQL commands we're going to run to create a record, delete a record, and stuff like that. But it's kind of better you understand how to use the commands for those that don't understand it, right? So SQL lets you access and manipulate databases, right? So no matter how you model your data, create your database and connect to your database, you need to write SQL to be able to communicate with it, right? You can't just do JavaScript that I've been doing because databases only understand SQL. Okay, so we're going to see a little example very soon. So this is just like a list of what SQL can do. If you come here, you can read on them, execute queries, retrieve data, insert data. So insert is create, retrieve is get, updates, yeah, the term updates, deletes, and stuff like that, right? So I am just going to go to one of the first examples, right? Okay. I'm just going to go to one of the first examples, right? But basically, whatever I have above here just tries to define SQL and what SQL can be used for, right? So if I go to one of the first queries, so this is just an example of how SQL queries are. I could have kind of brought up a node package or a node module that will make this a little bit easier, right? We can just do something with JavaScript and Java and Express the same way Express is handling our routes here, right? So I can just install, there's what we call an ORM, right? Sequelize. I'll just import it. Then I can use JavaScript to call the database, right? But I really want everyone to be able to learn the syntax, because when we get to Salesforce or Apex, you're going to be writing select queries directly to get data. Maybe you do select all from accounts or opportunities and stuff like that, right? So it's just better we kind of learn it now. So when we get to Salesforce, it's going to be a little bit easier. So again, this is the syntax for running SQL, and it's just as easy as saying select, I added something, right? It's just as easy as saying select all, or maybe select something from the name of the table. Okay, it has a syntax, right? We're going to get to that the same way JavaScript has its syntax and keywords, let, const, var, blah, blah, blah. So SQL also has its syntax or all its keywords, right? So we can see them here, but we're only just going to be playing around with 4 or 5. So let me just go back to the file editor I opened up, right? So again, this is a basic SQL syntax, right? Select, maybe this term means all from this table. So they have a table customer, select all from customer. If I run this SQL, we're going to see it's going to get customer records from a customer table they have hosted somewhere. Okay, so basically, SQL is a way. So if you can see, I didn't write JavaScript in here. I can't even write JavaScript in here. I don't even know how to start writing JavaScript in here, right? Because the database or the tables won't understand JavaScript. So we're going to have to learn how to use SQL queries. It's very easy. Let me not say it's very easy. The syntax is quite easy to learn based on what I'm sure everyone has done here. So we could be able to kind of get conversant with it when we get to Salesforce. Okay, so I gave an example. The first query I gave an example with is select all from customers. It's going to really make more sense because these guys already have a table somewhere that they are pulling this example from. So maybe when we create our own database, I'm going to create a database, create records in the database. Then we're going to kind of be selecting our own database. Then we'll see how like maybe a data store works and how all this stuff works, right? So for now, we're just going to use this playground. Then when I come back to my code editor, I'm going to create maybe a data store and kind of build a little crude application before we go for today. Okay, so before I open up to ask for questions again about SQL and models, I will want to kind of maybe go ahead with more queries on more select queries, right? So this is one of the keywords. Let me just go to the syntax again. So these are the most important. So they say some of the most important SQL commands: select, update, delete, insert into, create database, alter database. And we're going to be using just maybe, I think, 4 or 5 of these before we leave JavaScript, but they are going to be the most important ones we're going to learn. Okay, so again, I share this link. You can come use your playground to play around with it. When I get to maybe my code editor, JavaScript, trying to use models, I'm going to write small queries. But for now, basically, select this syntax, just select everything from customers, right? I can do select. Let me just change it a little bit. Let me see if I can change. I can do select. Okay, it's customer ID and address. Let me see if this will work from customers. Okay, I don't know the name there. I didn't spell it correctly. Okay, so I just changed the query and the response changed, right? So initially it was select everything, select all the columns from customers, and it returned everything. So I changed it to select customer ID, comma. Okay, let me add customer name and city from customers. No short column, customer ID. I spelled it wrongly again. Customer. I got it correct.
There's no R after O.
Thank you. Yeah, so I changed the statement and I got a different response, right? So this is how you kind of use SQL to manipulate records in the database, right? I can, okay, this gets all 91 record. I can limit, let me go to syntax. There should be a syntax called limit, right? Okay, they didn't add it here. Let me try limit 10. We're going to play around with this in maybe limit 10, if this should work. So now we already have 10 records. Okay, so if you learn SQL, you're just going to, it's going to be easy for you to maybe create softwares, build applications, and just get records from the database, right? So SQL is, I just did 3 things right now with just 1 line of code, right? SQL, let me not say it's easy, the syntax is easy to learn. Okay, so if you just first of all know select all from table name, you can just play around with the rest and you can update blah blah blah, delete blah blah blah. If you come to update, you're going to see how to update a record, update table name, blah blah blah, and stuff like that. So I'm just going to play with the select for today. Then I'm going to talk about CRUD. Then we're going to build a little CRUD app if we have time, with maybe a local or in-app data store. Then I'm going to see if I can connect a database and show you how to run database queries directly inside our JavaScript or our Express application. Okay. So again, for you to be able to communicate to the database, maybe when I jump to my code, we see it, you need to learn SQL, or you need to understand SQL and how to use SQL, right? And the SQL syntax is easy. You just need to kind of be able to just come here and look at it. I'm going to, why I'm not going into each of these like we normally do is because I only want to, or only have time to look at just 4 or 5 commands, right? Select, update, delete, insert into, and I think create table. And I'm going to do that in my app when we get there. Okay, so I want to go into using, maybe trying to create a data model in our application, then building a little CRUD app. I want to explain what a CRUD or what CRUD means before I go ahead. Okay, so again, I'm going to take a pause at this junction and just take questions. So someone asked in the chat, do we need to learn how to do inner joins? in SQL. For now, you don't need to learn how to do inner joins and all the associations. I'm not even going to talk about associations, so you don't need to learn it for now. Okay. Yeah. So anyone has any questions based on maybe modeling databases or SQL? I hope you guys can hear me, right?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead. I guess we'll ask questions at the end of the class, but I can't see any hands up. Okay, cool. So yeah, we've talked about models and maybe what models is used for. It's just used to kind of create a structure for your data. Databases are or is the storage where your data is being stored. Then types of databases, just relational with databases and non-relational databases. Then crude, right? So maybe when building or maybe while you're trying to build an actual software or an API, I don't know if we've talked about the meaning of API, right? When you trying to build an actual software or any actual software you already know or work with, there are 4 common operations. There are more of them, but there are just 4 common operations you should know as maybe a developer or as a developer, right? They are called the CRUD operations, right? So I think Babatope already talked about this in Salesforce admin, right? We have the create operation, the read operation, the update, delete. There's another one, get all, right? And so get one is still in read. There's get all and get one, right? So whatever maybe endpoints, route handlers you're going to be creating will revolve around these 4 or 5 requests. I think there should be 5. So again, I'm going to use Salesforce as an example. I can use maybe Facebook or any dynamic software, right? So this is the account model or the account database or the account table, right? I can perform all 4, what's it called? Operations, right? We call them HTTP, we call them CRUD requests, right? Operations on this account record. I'm going to explain with this, then go back to my document, right? If I click on new, right? And fill in this form, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to create a new record, right? So if I fill in this form with whatever I want to create and I click on save, what I've just done is in my software or my app, I've just created the record, right? This is the C in our CRUD, right? If I go to Salesforce again and edit, try to maybe on this record, click on this drop down and click on edit. If I change the details, maybe bulletin, Texas, scope of America, edited, or change this rating to hot, and I click on save, what I've just done is I've updated that record, right? That is the R. So each of all these operations, so if you maybe you're not a developer, you might just be carrying them out in the front end, right? So each of all these operations has how they are handled, right? How the request and the response is being handled, right? If I click on this, and click on delete, if I accept, it's going to delete this record in the database, right? So what I've just done is I have deleted this record. That is where our D comes in the database. And again, if I go to my SQL, you're going to see I have different SQL commands for all these operations. So they work hand in hand with database queries, right? So I have updates. I showed us updates. I just showed us deletes data from the database. Insert into is create, right? And the last one is read. So when I come here and click on, maybe I'm in account and I just click on contacts and it gets me all contacts, right? So what I've just done, I've selected all the contacts from the database. I've fetched or read the contacts, right? So this is our read. If I go to my SQL syntax, we're going to see we have a command select, right? So the CRUD operations works hand in hand with SQL syntax or SQL commands, right? So this, for you to be able to view all these contacts, your software, your application must have run select all from contacts. Okay, we are going to see all that in action when we build our little blog app, and everyone here is expected to maybe build something as similar as this, right? It will just have just one record, maybe a blog or a news. They're going to be able to get all blogs, create a new blog and save it to the database, delete a blog post, sorry, not blog, delete a blog post and update a blog post, right? So again, basically, anytime you hear CRUD, it basically means create, read, updates, and delete. Each of these has an SQL syntax, an SQL command. It operates with, and majorly what they do is, again, let me even read this. When building a software, you want your model to perform 4 basic operations, right? So basically what they do is, it's the four models or 4 functionalities of a basic dynamic app. I need to be able to create a resource. If it's a social media app, excuse me, I need to be able to sign up or create a user. I need to be able to edit my profile. I need to be able to maybe delete a picture I uploaded. Then I need to be able to view all my posts, all my pictures, right? So every dynamic app functions around these CRUD principles. There are more, there's puts, there are more, but basically it's just CRUD, right? Okay. Here I've explained new is create, and it has an equivalent insert into an equivalent SQL command. What's it called? We have edit, which is update. We have delete, which is read. Then viewing all this is read all. Okay, so just to summarize, CRUD operations is just CRUD operations are just operations and functionalities we build into our software, or sorry, our applications to handle different kinds of requests, right? So we can have a create request, a read request, an update request, a delete request, and we have to listen for all those requests in our app and handle them appropriately, right? So what I'm going to do, right, before I plug in maybe a model and a database, right, I'm going to try to build a CRUD application with just, I'm going to use maybe for a blog app, or I'm just going to use blog. We're going to create a blog post, read a blog post and try to see if we can delete and update. But I'm not going to kind of use a data storage form. I'm going to use objects. Okay, I am going to, let me see what's the time. Okay, let's just kind of connect everything and use SQL queries, right? So I'm going to come here. When we want to create a record, I'm going to check for the SQL syntax. We're going to create a record. We're going to see how we're going to try to connect the models and the controllers. So whenever is a create request, I'm going to call the model to create a record. Whenever is an update request, I'm going to call the model from the controller to update the record, right? So let's just do that. Then I'm going to use that file to explain the whole CRUD concepts, SQL, and databases again one more time if we have the time. Okay, so I'm just going to go into my VS Code. Let me see. I'll go to our app. If I go to home, right, we have welcome to index page. Today is okay. I used this the last time. So we want to build a little blog app, right? So the home page should just read all. Okay, let me change it. Let's add a link here called blogs. So I'm going to go to index. I'm sure everyone is already concerned with this. I'll add a new link and name it blog, right? The text should be blog. If I save it, if I save it and refresh, I'm going to see we have an additional route here called blog, right? So I'm going to, this endpoint is going to handle all our blog route handlers, right? If I click on it, I'm going to see welcome to blog page. Okay, I already created some stuff last time, but I'm going to delete it now. Just give me a minute. Blog. I just used this to simulate the data stored last time. So let me just comment this out. Okay, so right now what I want to do, right? I want to demonstrate these CRUD operations, right? Build database and models into our application, then use SQL queries to fetch data from our little data store I'm going to create, right? And I said the example we're going to use, we're going to try to create a blog app that lists all dummy blog posts. Then we can create, read. This page is already the read page because it's going to list all blog posts. We can create, read, update, and delete depending on how far we can go, right? Before I take questions. Okay, so I am going to go into my code editor right now. If I go to my, let me go from the beginning, app.js, I'm going to see that our app is expecting or is using a blog, right? We have the router, normal stuff. Then if I go to the router, okay, so this is where we're going to kind of use the full power of our controller, right? So this is just getting all like the base, what's it called? Base page of the blog endpoint, right? And as you can see, I created the controller and I'm passing get all posts, okay? So if I go to my controller and go to blog, you're going to see the only controller function I have. Let me take this off, please, so it doesn't confuse me. So the only controller I have, like we did for contact, is get all posts. Again, the only thing this controller is doing is sending a view page with an empty array of blog posts, right? So we're going to do something now. We're going to connect this to a database, import the database, and send a response to the user, right? So I'm going to just close this, go to my models. Don't worry if you don't have a models folder. I created this today. I'm going to go to index and uncomment everything I did earlier, right? I'm going to explain everything that is here. Okay, so like I said previously, maybe if you've only worked with Salesforce previously, if you've only worked with Salesforce previously, Salesforce gives you a user interface to kind of create fields, relationships, associations, and stuff like that. So if I want to create maybe account holder or account, I'll come here and click on new, right? But when you're coding, when writing codes, you have to create, in fact, you even have to create the database yourself. You connect the database user and just some kind of technical configuration stuff, okay? So I'm not going to go through connecting a database, creating a database, and installing the database, right? The way we are going to work, or I'm going to kind of maybe allow you guys test databases. I'm going to create a remote database and share a link where everyone can just play around with, right? Because I won't want to go around trying to, everyone is, we installed Node.js on our system, but installing and configuration on setting up maybe a database, it's a little bit too technical, right? So like I was saying, Salesforce kind of abstracts all this. You just have to use the graphical user interface to create fields and relationships, right? But if you're writing codes, again, remember, we're just trying to create a blog app. You need to set up your database, right? You need to connect your database. and kind of do some other stuff. I'm going to explain what's going here, then we're going to get to modeling. Okay, so this is just me connecting my database, right? Why you see maybe my username and my password is this, and the name of the database is API, right? Is because this database is installed on my computer. Excuse me. This database is installed on my computer, and I created it on my computer, right? So I have Postgres installed. Like I said, sorry, if I go back here, we are going to be using Postgres. And for you to kind of maybe use Postgres to store data, you have to have it installed, right? I already have Postgres installed. I'm going to create a resource. I won't want to do it on this call. I'm going to create a document, show maybe Windows and Mac users how to install Postgres after this class, okay? So this is just me setting up my configuration. Again, when you're coding, you have to do this manually. I'm just trying to kind of do some damage control. The way we have in this, our app.js, that I told you that it's all server configuration. You don't need to worry about it, right? All this error, if there's an error, if the error is in development, send it to, don't send it to the user. If it's not, don't send. These are just configurations that you don't need to bother yourself about. So this also, all these are just configurations that you only have to do once. And most times it's some kind of server configuration developer guys that does it, right? This is connecting a database. I'm not going to talk about this, but what I want to talk about is the data modeling. Okay, so whatever we've been doing here, sorry, I've been using Salesforce as an example. Whatever we've been doing here, select the data type is dates, email, is what you have to do by hand when working with code, right? When kind of modeling your data. So if you can see, we're creating a database, or sorry, creating a table. So for you, maybe this can be accounts. Let me use names we are familiar with, right? Accounts or contacts or opportunity, right? Stars know how to spell opportunity. Yeah, or opportunity, right? So the reason why I'm retyping this is just to show you that you're going to have to do your data modeling yourself every time. And for example, if I want to create this, just take this like an object, right? A custom object. Of our project, we created bill item, bill and stuff like that. So this is how you create a table and create fields and relationships in, or just you create fields in the table, right? This is super, super basic. I'm not going to try to introduce any association or child relationships, but this is how you do data model with raw SQL, right? So again, I set up my database. These are just configuration stuff. I connected my database. Then I'm doing my data modeling by hand, okay? So if you can see, let me just say create table if not exists. Let's use blog. Since we are trying to build a little blog app, then it's going to have an ID. Every record should or always have an ID. Salesforce automatically creates that for you, right? Again, Salesforce is here to make your life easy. If I click on this, view this application, I'm sure most of us here have used data loader, right? So this is the ID of this record. An ID is just a unique identifier for each record, okay? So you have to, when modeling your data, you have to put an ID field because whatever is here is going to be created as a table in your data store. I'm going to show you that shortly from my terminal. So like I showed you this image, your maybe based on design by, I don't know, maybe the BA or maybe an analyst, you always have to, like, maybe you get requirement based on how maybe any of your data is going to be modeled, right? But for us, I am creating a blog app. I'm not going to have a name. I'm going to need a title, right? I'm trying to change my data model, right? So this is just data type, right? Varchar means string. Sorry, if I just go here, should be a data type section, right? So let me just show something before I go. Okay, so like I was explaining with this Salesforce UI. So if I go to fields and relationship, try to create a new field, I'll have to select the return type, right? You always have to tell the computer what data type you're working with. So with Salesforce, you just select number and click on next. It helps you generate all the SQL to do this, but when writing raw SQL, you have to know the data type, right? So if it's number, okay, look here, age, I said age. If it's number, is integer. Okay, if it's a string, is varchar. If it's Boolean, maybe yes or no, I think Boolean should be Boolean. Blob, there is no Boolean. There's supposed to be a Boolean, date and time, sorry. There's a Boolean, but I just can't see it here, right? So the point is, the same way you declare data types here, you have to declare, when you're creating your model, you have to declare the name of the table, the data types, and the constraints, right? Again, if you go to the Salesforce UI, you're going to be setting some constraints like length. It mustn't be more than 18 characters, decimal places. You're going to see required, always require value in this field in order to save a record. If you click on this, and I try to create a contract without an account without filling in this field, I'm going to fall into problems. The same thing here. If I create, let's say, gender, type, string, if I put not null, I mean, what I'm trying to say is this field is required. So these are just different syntax for the same thing everyone here has done with maybe the Salesforce platform, right? So that's why I feel the syntax is going to be a little bit easier to learn. Okay, so what I'm doing here, I'm just creating a table with ID, title. Let me see, what else do we have to have in our title? I'll just put in author and body, right? So the body of the blog, right? So I'm going to save this. So in a nutshell, this can be done again. If you have an ORM, this can be done with maybe JavaScript and SQLite. I don't want to teach that because we're going to be using SQL queries in Salesforce. So this is how you do data modeling. Like I explained, data modeling is defining a structure for your application, or sorry, of determining the structure of how your data will be saved in the database. And this is just a clear example, right? We have a user object or a user table, but these are fields of the user table, right? First name, last name, email, password, gender. And if you go to the Salesforce, the same concept, right? We have objects, which are tables, and we have fields in each table, okay? So let me just go ahead. I want to create this. Let me just go ahead and create this table so we can see. The remaining things I'm doing here again is just damage control, right? I'm just trying to check if the table was created successfully or not. I'm going to change all this to blog. I'll just, yeah, so blog table created success. This is just damage control. If there's an error, do this. If there's no error, tell me that my table was created successfully, right? So it's just damage control. Okay. If I save this file and start my server, let me see. I'll stop my server. If I save this file and start my server, it should tell me that it's connected to database, right? If I go here, I told you this is a configuration section. It only needs to be done once. I'm consoling the log. If it's successful, just tell me it's successful, right? Database connected to database, block table created successfully. So right now I can start creating my maybe little crude application, but again, I want to go over maybe what I just did here. If it's still looking a little bit blurry.
Is Sam still talking?
I can't hear you.
No.
Hi, can you guys see my screen now?
Yes, we can see.
Okay, so sorry about that. I switched internet. My network was misbehaving. Wanted to explain one last time, right, that this is while writing code. I don't want to maybe open maybe a Salesforce or Apex project, but while writing, maybe creating data models or working with databases while writing code, you have to create your models yourself, right? Salesforce or maybe other platforms gives you the ability to use an interface, but if you're a developer, one power tool we have as developers, we can do all this directly from maybe writing codes and stuff like that. Okay, and you can even do more. Excuse me, you can do more than what is here, right? More than whatever can be done here by writing code and connecting to the API directly. So I'm just going to continue. I've created my server and my database is connected successfully. Like I said, I'm going to create a document and send across on how to create a database and how to connect a database on your local computer. Okay. So I've created my blog database. I want to create a basic blog app and use these crude operations to just test it. Okay. Okay, I've created my database. This is working. And as you can see again, this is just another object, right? Or an instance of this pool class. And I am like we've done in both our router and controllers. I'm exporting this model and we're going to see how we're going to use it in other places. Okay, so let me just go. If I go back to our web page now, I'm going to see blog, right? So just welcome to our blog page. Because the normal stuff with maybe building applications, if you click on the actual resource, it's going to list out all the records, right? That is read. So I want, whenever this endpoint is hit, I want to list out all our blog posts. So remember, we've not created any blog posts, right? So what we're doing, we're trying to play around with SQL commands, see how it works, see how CRUD operations work, while testing SQL syntax, okay? So I'm just going to go to my code, go back to routes. When we hit the get all route endpoint, it's going to go to get all posts, and I'm going to take out my comments now, right? Because I write a query to get all blog posts from database, right? I'm going to take this out, right? So initially, I'll just send in an empty array as maybe blog post, right? What I want to do now, I want to interface with the database here. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to do, let me just see. Let me just see users. Yeah, so I'm just going to import our database file, right? So if you can remember, I said the controller is the layer that kind of interfaces with the database, right? I'm going to do const pool equal, I can call it whatever, right? It's just a variable name equals, again, I'm going to require that file, go to the location models index.js. If I go to the index.js, it's just our database models and configuration. Okay, I am requiring it because I want to do some actions, so perform some crude actions with it in the controller file. So whenever we have what's it called, get all posts, I want to run a query that selects all posts in the database. So if I go back up, go to info, I'm going to see the command that gets all what's it called, the command that gets all records from database. If I run this, like we played around to get, like we played around with the last time, to get all records, all customers in the DB. Okay, so right now I'm just going to see, let me see, I already wrote this down. Let me just copy and paste this and just edit it to my needs, right? Block controller, rather than giving it an empty variable, I'm going to paste this, right, and explain what's maybe what I'm, okay, give me a while, maybe what I'm doing here, right? Okay. So if you look at this right now, right, if I go back to routes again, when we get all the like all the blocks, I'm going to block get all posts in our block controller. If I come here again, this is just a controller. Right now, rather than just rendering a view page, I am going to the database, right? I'm like kind of interfacing the database to get data, right? So if I go back to our image, you see that the controller goes to the model to get data, then sends to the user. Previously, we didn't have the model layer. We were just sending to the user, right? So right now I have my pool. This pool is just my database, right? So pool.query, I want to make a query. So this is just like, it's still synthetic sugar. But what you need to just know is I'm writing SQL queries, right? Select, my server should be throwing an error, right? So select all from, I'm going to change this because the name of my table has changed. I was working on something before. Name of my table, sorry, is blog. So I'm going to put select all from blog, right? Order by ID ascending. I'm going to take this away to just limit confusion. So just select all from blog, right? So it's going to return a callback function, and our values is going to be here, result, right? So I want to do, we're just going to explain this in a short while. Res.render blog, then our blog post will be result.rows, okay? So let me just remove this now. Right now, I've changed our get all controller to communicate to the database first and before returning a response, okay? As you can see, we're using SQL queries. This is just as simple as what we had here. Select all from customers. If I run it, it's going to just bring out all the customers. It's the same thing I'm running here. Select all from blog. So right now, we don't have any blog posts, right? So if I save this now, okay, my server is down. If I save this, go to our page, refresh. I've not handled it in the front end, right? Because I'm sending it to the front end, giving the blog post variable. So I have to go and handle it in the front end, right? So I'm just going to go to the views. So this is just how you handle building a real software, right? I'm going to go to blogs. I am already trying to, okay, loop through it, right? So we don't have any blog posts, so nothing is showing because I'm already handling it. I think we did this last week, Friday. I'm already trying to handle it, right? So if you can see, I'm looping over the blog post variable. So for each blog post, create a p tag and say the blog post title was created by the blog post author. Okay, so if I create a blog post right now, we're going to see maybe 1 or 2 or 3 blog posts on this page. Okay, so right now, from what we have here, I've only created a read, I just created a read operation, or that's what we've been doing all this while, right? We've been creating just read operations. And what it just does is select all, like maybe select, or like I change it to select maybe author title name from blog. So select query just returns all the select query returns all the records from your DB. It's the same thing with you maybe clicking maybe your inbox in your Gmail, basically works the same thing, right? It gets all your emails. If I click on accounts, it gets all the accounts. That's why it's loading. So the read operation works with the select query, and that's what we're just done, but we don't have any data in our database yet, right? I'm just going to try to do one, just try to insert a record. So when we load this page, we're going to see records. Then maybe I'll take questions and explain more on maybe anything that's a little bit confusing, right? So I want to put a create, I want us to be able to create a record. So that is the only way we can test everything we've done now. And for us to do that, I'm going to put a button in our page. I'm going to put button. No, sorry, not a button. I'm going to put a form on our page. So I'm going to go to W3 schools. Sorry, I don't want to write a form from scratch. So I'm just going to go copy basic form. HTML forms. Yeah, I'm going to copy this like we did for our link section, right? I'm going to copy this. Sorry. I'm going to put a new tag. Create a new blog. Okay, so again, we're just trying to create functionality and our page might not look good. So let me just change all this label. First label should be title, or let me use author. Okay. For sorry, let me check my model again. Let me see what fields I used. Title, author, body. So I'm going to create author, title. And one last one. body. Okay. I save this now and refresh. Our blog page will have the 3 fields we require. Let's take off this break. No, this one. Sorry. Yeah, so if I refresh this now, our little blog form should have the 3 fields we need to create a blog post, right? So basically what I want to do is I want to insert a blog post so we can see maybe a list of blog posts here. Okay, so I'm going to say author, Tolex, title, how to create a post. So maybe this can be maybe a real blog site, but we're just trying to use dummy content. Body, so maybe your actual content, right? This is the body of my post. Okay, so ideally, when I click on submit, my server is supposed to maybe handle whatever request or handle the request and create the blog post, right? So if you remember, I think when we were dealing with forms, someone asked what this part of the form was meant for, right? Or what it's supposed to do, right? So right now we are going to kind of really practicalize how the browser and your application handles form data and maybe sends this across to the server to handle, right? So the reason for this action is, like I said the last time, the form is asking you for where it's going to send everything in this form to. Okay, so that's why you have the action attributes. So the last time, I think when we were working on event listeners, I had to do prevent default somewhere in our JavaScript file, because whenever you have a form, it's always going to try to submit the form to a URL you specify. So right now, what I want to do, I want to send it to blog. So remember, if I go down to our links, where are our links? Don't we have links here? Okay, we don't have links here. If I go to maybe contact.js, if I go back to our links, so this is how you write endpoints or route handlers in maybe a server-side application, right? You don't need to do contact.ejs or contact.js, right? You just put in a / the name of the endpoint you want to call. Okay, I'm going to go back and put a / I want you to go to blog, but with a method of post. Okay, I'm going to explain what this means, right? So when I submit this form, it's going to go to my base URL / blog, right? But this time, if I go to my routes, go to blog, if you can remember, any request that comes to our blog router handler with a get request gets handled by this, right? But we are going to create a new one that listens for a post request, right? So again, one last thing, all these operations have maybe HTTP verbs they work with, right? Update is maybe router.update, delete is router.delete, read is router.get, and create is router.post, right? So these are just different HTTP methods that we have, okay? So I said send it via a post method and send it to / blog, okay? If I save this now, go to my router, or let's start from the app file again. This is where it's going to come, / blog. It's going to go into this file. I'm just going to go into that file, roots, blog. Then if you see the file, the first one we are handling is to get the home page, right? Router.get. I said in our HTML class, whatever URL you visit on your web browser, you use a get request, right? So we want to listen for a post request. I'm going to do router.post. the same base URL because it's coming to blog. Then I'm just going to do I'm just going to do blog controller dot create a post. Okay, again, I don't have this function yet, but I'm going to go create it now. So, but basically, I'm expecting a post request on the blog endpoint, and I want to send it to blog controller dot create a post. Okay, I'll save this. I'll go to my blog controller. Remember, we only have blog controller dot get all posts now, right? I'm going to collapse it just to give me space. I'll add a new one, blog controller dot create a post. So this is what we've just done previously. We're creating controllers, control and request handlers, right? Request, response, next. Okay. So whenever there's a post request to create a blog post, it goes to blog controller dot create a post. So we're going to write a request handler to handle this response, right? I have been maybe introducing some little new stuff, right? Post, get, update, delete. You can maybe ask me questions on that because I'm just going to be talking about them bit by bit. So this form now, the way sending data to the server works, you can read about it. I'll try to share a link on how it works, right? It sends everything in this form to this endpoint, right? So it's this endpoint just translates to, let me just type it here, HTTP, maybe your base URL. It's going to know your base URL, right? But ours is HTTP localhost 5000/blog. So this is where it's going to send it to, okay? Sorry, this is not JavaScript. I was writing JavaScript syntax of formatting, commenting. So it's going to send it here, but with a post request. But one sweet thing, excuse me, one good thing Express is going to do for us, right? It's going to give us access to whatever values was filled in this field. Or sorry, was filled in this form field, right? So if I go back to my controller now, I'm going to show you the use of, I think someone asked this a while ago, the use of these two stuff Express gives us access to on the function controller, right? So if I do request response, request means additional details or info coming in from the request browser. Response means maybe an object or something I can use to send the browser a response. Is quite self-explanatory, right? A request is coming, then everything the requester sends or the browser that is sending the request sends along with the request inside this object. Please, can you please mute? Okay, thank you. Same thing goes for response, right? So let me just quickly write this out so we'll just see practically how this stuff works, right? So I'm going to save. I'm just going to maybe copy it from my users file because I already wrote it. I don't want to write it from hand again. Create a new user. I'll just copy this and change it. And I'll explain what I wrote, right? So we want to create a new blog post. So previously, I had pool.query, just select all from blog. If I go to my SQL what's it called, documentation, and see where I can create a record, you're going to see the syntax to do that is, where is it? Insert into, right? So this inserts new data into a database. Let me see an example of it. SQL insert into, I'm going to see insert into table name, then they're going to put in the values, right? Excuse me. So let's just do that. When it works, maybe we're going to see how it works and I will explain. So get all posts is just select all from blog post, then we'll create a post. The command is insert into the name of the table. I'm going to change this to blog. Then you're going to put the fields that you want to insert into, right? So for us, our model has ID, title, author, and I think body, right? Okay. So this is just the syntax, right? So we're going to insert into, sorry, if I go back to SQL, you're going to see insert into the name of the table, then the columns, right? Column 1, column 2, column 3, same thing I have here. Insert into the name of the table, column 1, 2, 3, 4, right? So these are all my columns. So it's the same thing I have in the syntax. Then the next function is going to have values, right? The values I want to insert. So the values, initially, I was writing the values by hand. I was hard coding it, right? But right now, since we are using Express, I can, and we are sending or want to create a user from a form, I can get all the values in this form from the request or the request object. So this is an object, and I think I console log it the last time someone asked what is inside here. So whatever is sent from the front end or whatever browser is sending requests to our website is going to be saved in a request.body object, right? I can console.log it. So let me just do something. Let me just do console log requests.body. So we're going to see all the data we filled in this form coming out in our back end, right? I'm going to comment this out now. So I don't want to create anything in the table for now. I'm just going to do res.send. Let me send back to the users page. Sorry, the what's it called? Get all page. I just want to show you how all the data we sent from the front end is going to display at the back end, right? Let me just reverse the send blog. Then I'm going to send an empty array. If I do this now, go back, refresh this page, and fill this form, right? I initially wrote in toolx to create a post. This is the body of my post, right? If I click on submit, it's going to come back to this page. The reason you did not mention because it came back to the same page, right? But if I go to my code editor and open up my console, you're going to see all those details I filled out in the front end, right? So I put in the author as toolx, the title as how to create a post, and the body of the blog post as this is the body of my post, right? So if you can see, I'm getting it from this object Express is giving to me. So Express just handles, or whatever server you're using just handles getting, as long as you specify where it's going to go to, you listen for it, it's going to send you whatever you fill into the form in your backend. Okay. So I just showed you we have access to author, title, and body. Okay. So what do we do now? I need those three variables. I'm going to say let author equals to request.body.author. So if you can see, this body object, this body variable is an object, and I can access it by calling the key. Same thing for let title equals request.body.title, right? Then let body equals request.body.body, right? So what I've just done here is I just kind of collected the three values coming from my form and saved it in three different variables. Express is already giving them to me in this request body variable. So what do I need to do now? I want to save this in the database. I have the values now. So I'm going to open up my SQL query. Remember, insert into our table these columns, then the values are, I am going to insert 1. Let me see if I don't put in ID, if it's going to auto-implement ID. Let me see if I don't, let me not put ID. So I'm going to put in name as, can I put in name here now? I'm going to put name as, sorry, title as, sorry. Let's put the ID as 1, right? Title as, I'm going to call in my title variable. Author, I'm going to call in my author variable. Then body, I'm going to call my body variable, right? So this is just referencing the variables we just created, right? So again, let me see if I have any errors in the console. No. So before I try this, insert into blog is just the syntax from SQL, right? Insert into table name, call your columns, then give the values you want to insert, right? So, excuse me, insert into blog, ID, title, author, body, and the Hi. You guys can see my screen, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, sorry, my network kicked me out. So let me just run this stuff so we can see how maybe creating and fetching from the DB works today. And we're going to kind of take all this whole stuff a little bit slower tomorrow. But I just wanted to kind of do all this. So we'll just work on each of them for the remaining days we have, right? So I think where I stopped was I was trying to save this file and test in the front end. Again, this is my create controller. I'm receiving all the fields I filled in from this form. Then I'm passing it. I'm trying to create in, let me remove this console log. I'm trying to create a new record in the database. I'm just going to take this off. So I'm just going to, okay, let's say I'm going to send to render, sorry, hold on. Okay, so when it's created, I'll just go back to the same page, we don't have much pages, so I won't be able to handle it correctly, right? So I'm just going to go back to the same page and just send in an empty array first. I hope we don't have an error. Okay, so I'm inserting it to the DB with these record fields and these values, right? So let me try this and see if it should work this time. So author, okay, thanks for helping me to Lex. Code. This is the body of my blog post. If I click on create now, okay, I have an error, sorry. Syntax error. Okay. So it's not accepting my syntax. Let me just do values. Let me try something. So just give me a minute. So let me check the syntax. Okay, generation variables. Okay, so let's try if this works. Since you need syntax error, right? Let's see. Okay. Don't know why this is not working. So I think too, I want to use variables, right? So let me just go to.
Sorry, Sammy.
Yeah.
I noticed you didn't put your ID there. Is your ID auto incremental or something?
Could be. But let's try and see if it's ID. Could be 1, 2, 3. It's telling me syntax error, not ID, right? It should go to incremental because I'll have to come back and be doing ID every time. It's not about the ID. So the ID is auto-incremental. I think there's just one little syntax error. Let me just confirm. Next 1 minute and just node. Let me look at the documentation, sorry. Transactions. Values one. Context. Bank. Why is it not accepting my variables? Just want to insert. Okay, let me try like putting the values directly here, right? So it's to create, then we'll look for the issues. So values, I want to put in title as, sorry, values is string. Just give me 1 minute. Second argument is author. Third argument is body. This should work because I'm directly putting the values, but I'm going to try to make it dynamic once it works. There's something I'm not seeing, right?
So, I mean, can you remove the comma after the bracket?
Yeah. Thanks. Wasn't seeing that. Still breaking. Invoice syntax for type integer to lex. Did I make? What did I make integer? So it works now, but integer auto. Okay, I didn't look at modeling. I made my auto to be a number. Okay. Let me just change this so we can just go for today, right? So I'm just going to do this and see. If it works, I'm just going to correct everything and show how it works from the form. Just give me 1 minute. Okay, this works now. And if I refresh, I have my first blog post, but let me just fix this and do it correctly. So let me see. I already created my model to have toolx as index. Let me create another one. Toolx second title. This is the body of my post. By one. Right now, let me just try. I want to make it dynamic, so we won't have to be hard coding the values. Okay, right, so I want to put in title as title auto as auto body as body. Right, so I save this now. So title, okay, auto, title. Okay, yeah, this works now, right? So I think I don't know who that was. I think it was Olusina also, but I was having an extra, I was having an extra comma after my bracket. So that was what was giving me issues. But this works now. So basically, right now, I have this page that lists all my blog posts, and I have a little form here. It's not like really looking nice, but I can create a blog post and it's going to appear below here. So why you're seeing one, my title by one, is because I accidentally made the model, like what I was telling you guys, right? If you go to Salesforce, new fees and relationship, and set the data type to number, the database is going to shout at you if you try to put anything other than number. So I accidentally created or made my model to accept integer, which means number, for the author field. Okay, so to undo this, maybe I have to like overwrite or delete and drop this database. I don't think we have time for that now, but basically, this is just how maybe CRUD operations work. By CRUD, I mean create, read, delete, and update, right? It's the same form we have in all these places, but only that this is just looking a bit nicer because of CSS and some little styling. So this is a form. You create a record, same way we have a form here, but at the back, or maybe at the back end of maybe your Salesforce org is receiving the data in some way. The way I've received my data here and calling an SQL or maybe a DB call to save the record based on the model you had, right? You have, right? So I am going to stop here, right? We're going to maybe continue or start from wherever I stopped tomorrow. But I think it would be a little bit easier tomorrow because I'm going to share a document for everyone to maybe go through or everything I've talked about today. Right? I talked about controllers, CRUD, database models, and just some other little new stuff, right? I'm going to go over them again from tomorrow and see how we can solidify maybe creating, reading, updating, and deleting, right? So I'm just going to take one or two questions, right, before we go. Otman. Hello, Otman. If you're speaking, I can't hear you.
Hi, Sammy.
Hello?
Can you hear me, Sammy?
I can hear you now.
Yes, please. What is the command to stop your server when you start it?
Control C.
I tried it, it didn't work.
Make sure you have your focus. What did I do? Make sure your focus, like you're on your terminal, and just press Control C. Are you on a Mac?
Yes, I am.
Yeah, Control C.
Okay, I should focus the cursor on the.
Yeah, just click on the mouse and make sure your ISO is focused on the terminal, then Control C. It kills the terminal.
All right, thank you.
Yeah. PFASH. Hello. I cannot hear you. I don't know if it's just me. I'm going to try to confirm if someone else can hear you. Can anyone hear him? Your voice is cracking, sorry. It's, you can speak. Just go ahead and speak.
Okay. I said I'm going to ask the question. So what I say is if I'm going to videos like and I get from
I seriously can't hear you. Can someone help me confirm if they can hear him so I know it's not just from me?
No, I can't hear him either.
Okay, I cannot hear anything you're saying, Pifash. It's like it's cracking, it's breaking. So maybe you can drop a chat. Yeah, so I won't have time to take much questions, but we'll just go over all this again tomorrow. Modeling, database, SQL, inserting and creating records, right? So we've already overshot our time. When we come tomorrow, I'll start over again, explain how to maybe create model. We're going to create more 4 models. I already created a model with 3 fields and I actually made a mistake here. So I really, really want you to just on your own time, maybe practice with SQL syntax, right? Just use the select, insert, update, and you can play around with it directly on this content as we've always done. You try it yourself and you manipulate data they give to you. So maybe from tomorrow, we are going to continue with our little blog software we are trying to build. Okay, so I think that should be all from me. And since there's no okay, Enobong.
Yeah, Sammy, sorry, please. Your control control folder, the one we worked with today, and the model, all those pages. Is it possible for you to just send it across to us as a PDF? Because I think before this video will be up by tomorrow morning, one can go through it this night, and since it's fresh in our memory, you know, we can quickly look at some of those things and you know, get it in our brains faster. I'm just thinking if it's possible. If it's not, we'll wait for the video.
I'm going to, it's possible, right? I'm just going to share it, just share it as a zip file in the group chat.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay, so someone is Pifash is asking the same thing, right? Are you in? Are you Pifash? Are you in the group? Because I'm going to drop everything. It's the same folder. I'm just going to drop everything in the WhatsApp group. Are you in the WhatsApp group? I'm just going to drop it there. Okay. Okay, how do I contact you?
Sammy, was it me you were asking if I'm in the WhatsApp group?
No.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm just going to drop the codes in the group before maybe the video gets up. Then tomorrow we are going to continue. Okay, so thank you everyone. Yeah, so thank you everyone, right? So bye, good night.